Hi everyone, Flaming Footy here, and welcome back to a new video on the channel. And today, guys, here I am to do a full in-depth AFL 2023 finals preview. Let's go ahead, hop right into things. So, of course, before we even start, you know the 8 teams participating. Collingwood, Melbourne, Brisbane, Port Adelaide, St Kilda, GWS, Carlton and Sydney are the 8 teams in this year's final series. And this is the order that they finished in on the ladder. So it's Collingwood first, Brisbane second, Port Adelaide third, Melbourne fourth, Carlton fifth, St Kilda sixth, GWS seventh, and Sydney eighth. And here is the finals week 1 fixture. Collingwood and Melbourne open things up on the Thursday night. Carlton and Sydney playing the first elimination final on the Friday night. Second elimination final is a little bit early on Saturday in that traditional Sunday afternoon time slot on the Saturday. St Kilda and the Giants, and then Brisbane and Port Adelaide rounds things out Saturday night at the Gabba in the second qualifying final. Here is the finals brackets. This is the bracket that we use for finals. So I'm just going to go ahead and run you through it. So qualifying final 1, first versus 4th. Elimination final 1, 5th versus 8th. Elimination final 2, 6th versus 7th. Qualifying final 2, 2nd versus 3rd. And then the winner of qualifying final 1 goes to prelim final 1. The loser goes to semi-final 1. The winner of elimination final 1 goes to semi-final 1 to play the loser qualifying final 1. Elimination final 2, the winner of that goes to semi-final 2, and then the winner of qualifying final 2 goes to preliminary final 2. The loser of qualifying final 2 goes to semi-final 2. Then the winner of semi-final 2 goes to preliminary final 1. That'll be against the winner of qualifying final 1. Then the winner of semi-final 1 goes to preliminary final 2 against the winner of qualifying final 2. And then, of course, the 2 sides that win the prelim head through the grand final. And then, of course, the winner of the grand final is the winner of the grand final. So, yeah, that's the finals bracket. That's how it works. So these are my finals predictions. I've got Collingwood defeating Melbourne in the first qualifying final to go through to the first prelim final. I've got Carlton defeating Sydney on the Friday night in the first elimination final to advance, Sydney being eliminated. I've got the Giants knocking off St Kilda. The Giants advance, the Saints are eliminated. And then Port Adelaide activate their double chance with them losing to the Lions at the Gabba. So in semi-final 1, of course, as Carlton beat Sydney and Melbourne lost to Collingwood, in my opinion, I believe Melbourne win in advance. And the Power do the same against the Giants. Then in the first prelim, I've got the Pies advancing to the grand final, knocking off Port Adelaide. And Brisbane go the whole year undefeated at the Gabba, defeating the Demons at that venue. Which means the grand final is Collingwood versus Brisbane. And I've got Collingwood winning the grand final by 14 points over the Brisbane Lions. And this is just as a recap, this is the full finals fixture. These are just my predictions, but this is what I predict the finals fixture and how the finals bracket, I believe, will look. So there it is. So I'm going to do a little season review for each club. But Sydney, they finished 8th, and they're going to be going into the finals in some pretty decent form. Last quarters have been a little bit of a concern for them. But aside from that, they have had a couple of shocking games this year, but a couple of really decent ones as well, especially as of late in the season. They've been very scratchy in a couple of their games this year, but they've also been pretty decent in some of them. It hasn't been as great of a season as last year was. It has been a little bit of a disappointment for Sydney, but they're still in the finals. They're still a chance. They've had some really good last couple of weeks, especially the win over the Giants at Giants Stadium. The win over Adelaide was really good as well, even though that probably shouldn't have been the case. But they will be meeting Carlton on Friday night. Well, not this Friday night, but Friday night soon at the MCG in the elimination final. But yeah, definitely not the greatest years for Sydney, but they're still contending. They're still a chance. We go from one New South Wales team to the other, the Giants, who were such a huge improver. Like the Swans, they were in the bottom 4 at one stage and they managed to dig their way out of trouble. They started off the year relatively poorly. They couldn't quite get wins here. They were being alright, they were being consistent, they were playing some pretty decent footy, but just not quite winning it. But yeah, then after that win against Geelong, really in Indigenous Sir Doug Nicholls rounds at GMHBA Stadium with the odds all against them, things started to turn their way, and then they just got on a bit of a winning run. They were really good, especially knocking off the Demons, which was such a huge win. The Crows at the Adelaide Oval, and then the Doggies at Mars Stadium, and then the couple of weeks against the Swans and the Power weren't the greatest, but big wins against the Dons and the Blues to finish things. And they're going in favourites against the Saints in the elimination final, which I definitely feel like is definitely fair. The Giants, they're one of the underdogs in the finals, an underrated team, and they can definitely get some damage. I can see them getting quite far and doing a bit of damage indeed. This year for St Kilda has been quite a story to say the least. It's been pretty interesting. They started off the year really well, as we know, in their 150th anniversary year, getting the win in that special game. But their year started off really well, and then after that loss against Port Adelaide, they just started their season just started to turn for the worse, and it did look like they were going to fall out of the top 8. They did have a very few scratchy weeks, but after that win against North Melbourne, it just started to kickstart something, and they got rocking and rolling. They found some pressure. They found scoring. The win against Richmond a couple of weeks ago, and as well as Geelong was really good. And then they were decent against the Lions at the Gabba. It's going to be such a huge elimination final against the Giants. It's going to be such a cracking game, this one. Their season has been a pretty decent one as well. They did go through that mid-season slump, but they're definitely out of that now, and are definitely a chance for the flag, depending on how far they can possibly get. But they're going to have to knock off the Giants in the elimination final, which would be a cracking contest. Carlton finished 5th, and their year started off okay, a draw, then defeating Geelong. But things started to just not quite go their way. They had a couple of heavy losses. They did beat the Eagles before then. Their fixture really did turn hard. They did play a lot of last year's finalists in this run, and it looked like they weren't going to make finals. Their scoring was an issue, but against Gold Coast in round 14, there was just a switch that was flicked, and they just started to score heavily. They started to just go back really well. They were playing really good footy, and that was just so huge. They were knocking off teams like Collingwood and Port Adelaide. They're up the top of the ladder, and then they just got some huge wins. The one against Melbourne was probably more luck, as well as Gold Coast. That was a lucky one, and it hadn't quite been going their way for the past couple of weeks. Which they were showing signs of a little bit of, they weren't showing dominant signs in the past few weeks, and then it all just kind of crumbled against the Giants. But I still feel like they are going to be out, if they can get a really good team out on the field. That they're still missing a couple of players, but I reckon they can do a lot of damage in September still. I still feel like Carlton can do a fair bit of damage, even with their last few weeks definitely not being their absolute best. But no, I still believe they can do a fair bit of damage, can Carlton. So the 4th place team was Melbourne, and it has been a pretty decent year there for Melbourne. They've had a couple of, they've been able to score pretty heavily, but their year started off pretty well. A gather round loss wasn't their greatest, but they finished inside the top 4. They definitely deserve that top 4 finish, and they're going to be a tough side to beat in the finals. They've played some really consistent footy throughout the year. They have had some patches where they haven't quite been scoring as high, but they definitely have unleashed that they can score high. In the past few weeks, getting some really high scores. It's been going back to low scoring as of late, but their defence and their midfield's in really good shape, which I definitely still feel like they can restrict sides to lower scores. They'll probably have to get a decent score of their own if they do want to win some games as well, but I still feel like that is definitely capable of a very versatile Melbourne team. And that qualifying final against the Pies looms as a massive game on the Thursday night. Port Adelaide had the tough task of going to the Gabba to play their qualifying final, but they did beat the Lions in round 1. They did lose both their showdowns, but they did get on a really good 13-game winning streak throughout the mid part of the year, which was so huge as to why. I mean, they were in the top of the table contention for the whole year. They could have finished first for the whole year. They ended up finishing 3rd. They did probably butcher a couple of opportunities towards the later end of the year when they did lose a few games in a row against Carlton, Collingwood, the Crows and the Cats, but those were some pretty good sides. A really good win over the Giants. Their last couple of weeks haven't been the greatest of weeks, but they've still done what they've needed to do, and I still feel like they'll definitely have a very good crack in this final series. Beating Brisbane at the Gabba will be tough, but if they can get the upset, one of the hugest upsets, it'll be huge for their year. Brisbane have had a great year this year. What a huge year it has been. They're undefeated at the Gabba, and they are going really well. And of course, that game against the Power at the Gabba is going to be so huge, because if they win that they're almost guaranteed to get through the grand final. It's not a guarantee, but they've got a very decent chance of actually getting there. And their MCG hoodoo, of course, was broken in last year's final series. They nearly got over the Demons at the MCG a little bit earlier this year. I don't think that'll be too concerning, that MCG hoodoo. It might be, but if they can get to if they can beat the Power, it's just going to be so huge for their finals hopes, because they'll be playing a preliminary final at the Gabba, and that's just massive. Top of the table Pies, they finished 1st this year. They got a huge qualifying final against the Demons. It's going to be such a cracking game, that one. But they've had a good year. They've been sitting top of the table most of the year. They've been playing like it. And yeah, they've been really good side this year, and of course they did deserve that first place finish. So I don't really have to say too much about the Pies because they've done a good job. The last few weeks have been a little bit concerning, but against Essendon, that 70-point win pretty much just cleared up any worries. They're going to be getting some players back like Dacos, Moore, and Murphy, etc., etc. So yeah, I still feel like Collingwood are probably one of the flag favourites. But again, though, as I said with Melbourne, huge qualifying final coming up: Collingwood versus Melbourne. What a huge week one of finals we have, and what a huge finals series we have coming up. So there is the full AFL 2023 finals preview. I'll be doing a separate finals week 1 preview, which will be covering all of these games separately. That's my predicted finals fixture. But yeah, there'll be a separate video previewing the finals week 1 games. This is just a full AFL 2023 finals preview, and I do hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please do make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you guys never see another video on the channel. Thank you guys so much. Bye everyone. Flame Footy out.